Hello everyone, I am Dr. Pavitra and today is going to be a delightful one-slide education on caput, cephalhematoma and subgaleal hemorrhage. This is something that you see in your newborn babies post-delivery. It's important for your practice and your examination, both from theory and practical point of view. Questions will definitely be asked. So what is caput? What happens in caput is that when the baby is passing through the narrow vaginal canal, this happens only in a vaginal delivery. So this part is getting pressed. So what happens? The veins in these parts are unable to drain because of the pressure here. So venous pressure increases. When venous pressure increases, what happens? There is going to be increased hydrostatic pressure. This hydrostatic pressure pushes the fluid out into the interstitial space. This increase in fluid in interstitial space is what you see as caput succedaneum. Basically, this is a fluid collection, serosanguinous fluid collection in the subcutaneous plane. Since it is in the subcutaneous plane, it is not bound by any margins. You see the maximum size and firmness at birth. It softens and resolves by 2 to 3 days. So, at birth is when you see the maximum swelling slowly reduces and becomes okay by around 2 to 3 days. It crosses suture line. It does not have a distinct margin. Exception is when the baby was delivered via vacuum. It indicates prolonged labor. There is no associated intracranial pathology. This is just simple fluid extravasation. No, why will there be intracranial pathology? There can be sometimes a halo ring of hair loss in a baby with long-standing caput. What about cephalhematoma? Before we go into that, look at this picture. This picture is sometimes asked in your theory exams. They ask you to draw the different layers of scalp and different hemorrhages that happens in different layers of scalp. So layers of scalp you can remember easily by the mnemonic scalp itself. So skin, your connective tissue, A is your aponeurosis, loose areolar tissue, P is your periosteum. So if you cannot remember everything, just remember S, A and P. Okay, so skin, your aponeurosis and your periosteum. So if you see here, this is your skin, this is your periosteum, the white line that you have here is your periosteum. Where did your aponeurosis go? Let me see. This blue one is your aponeurosis. Okay. So when you have a fluid collection, this is supposed to be white in color, but for better representation it is given in red color. So between your skin and your aponeurosis, you have your caput. If you see, it is not bound by any margins, right? So it can go either way. It is maximum seen at birth because the fluid extravasation happens before birth. After birth, there is nothing stopping the veins from draining, right? The hydrostatic pressure is going to reduce. So the fluid will get resorbed into the veins and the caput resolves spontaneously by 2 to 3 days. So this is about caput. So when you have a blood collection beneath the periosteum, okay, below the periosteum, so you have the bone here and you have a periosteum covering. The periosteum dips into the suture areas. So what happens? It is bound by borders, correct? So you have a cephalhematoma that is bound by borders because periosteum dips into the in between two bones, in between the sutural lines. Let's see about cephalhematoma and come back to this diagram. Cephalhematoma occurs in 2% of the babies. It occurs secondary to trauma during labor, resulting in rupture of diploic veins. This rupture of diploic veins results in hematoma formation. So what is this? This is actual blood collection. Unlike caput where you had serosanguinous fluid collection. Okay, this is blood. Where does it happen? It happens below the periosteum in the subperiosteal layer, whereas your caput happens in the subcutaneous plane. Here there is rupture of veins, correct? So for the veins to heal, it is going to take some time. So till the time the blood will seep. So it slowly increases in post-birth and you will be able to make out very well by around 12 to 24 hours. And for the blood to resorb on its own, it's going to take a longer time. On an average 2 to 3 weeks. It can range anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 weeks. How to remember it easily? 2 days your caput, 2 weeks your cephalhematoma. Simple, remember like that. It does not cross the suture line and it is limited by the periosteum, whereas caput crosses the suture line because it does not have any borders. Since there is a periosteal covering that is dipping into the suture line, there will be distinct margins for cephalhematoma. The cause for this is instrumentation or some injury, and there can be associated linear skull fracture in cephalhematoma. Always look for skull fractures. 5% of the babies with cephalhematoma can have a linear skull fracture, so you should be looking into it. So this is about cephalhematoma. Let's take a look at the diagram once again. Between skin and your aponeurosis, if you have a fluid collection, that is your caput. If you have blood beneath the periosteum, subperiosteal layer, that is your cephalhematoma. And what is your subgaleal hemorrhage? You have the galea aponeurotica, right? So beneath the aponeurosis, above the periosteum, you have this area, collection of fluid called as subgaleal hemorrhage. Why are we most worried about this? Among the hemorrhages that are extracranial, I can say, subgaleal hemorrhage is something that we worry most about. Why? Again, it does not have borders. If you see, it can go underneath the periosteum, no? Underneath the aponeurosis, I am sorry. So, subaponeurotic or subgaleal region extends from above the supraorbital ridges to ears and in the back to nape of the neck. So, it's such a huge area. Such a huge area for the blood to continue to accumulate, right? So let's look about it. So this is the area between the aponeurosis and periosteum, which is a huge area, and when you have fluid collection, you press over it, you can see a fluid wave because it's all one continuous space, and there will be more ecchymosis over scalp in subgaleal hemorrhage compared to that of cephalhematoma. It crosses suture line, it extends from orbital ridge in front to ear on the sides to hairline at the back. It happens in babies with underlying coagulopathy, underlying injury, underlying asphyxia. The presentation of such babies depends on the severity of subgaleal hemorrhage. If it's going to be too much, then the babies are going to be having pallor and shock. They can have CNS manifestations like decreased tone. Clinically, you will definitely see a swelling. The swelling will raise the ears. It will form like a loose cap. If you remember the Baby's Day Out cinema, no, you have the baby wearing one fan sort of cap in the back. Alright, so that is how it is going to be. Only imagine that inside the scalp. That's how big a subgaleal hemorrhage is going to be. The importance of monitoring a head circumference, I cannot stress this enough. If you have increase in 1 centimeter of occipitofrontal circumference or your head circumference, you know that there is extra 40 ml blood that has been added into the space. Increase in depth of the space, increase in depth by 1 centimeter can increase or can suggest that there is 260, approximately 240 to 260 ml of blood in that space. So 1 centimeter increase in circumference means extra 40 ml. 1 centimeter increase in depth of the subgaleal space can hold up to 260 ml of blood. So why is it important? Continuous monitoring. If it is going to increase, you know that the baby is losing blood, then you are going to give good supportive care, ABC, including blood transfusion. Phototherapy, because this blood can break down to result in jaundice, and only if infected you are going to drain. Both in case of cephalhematoma and subgaleal hemorrhage, unnecessary drainage should not be done. You will drain only if it is going to be absolutely necessary, like in the case of a infected scalp. So these are some of the pictures that I took directly of Google. No copyright infringement. Hopefully all the rights lie with the people who have posted it. So this is an example of your caput. Why do I say caput? Because this is a baby who has been just born. How do I say that? I see some blood marks, right, and the hair is matted, suggesting that the baby was in amniotic fluid, right, and there is a swelling that is huge, looking like the presenting part. So this should be caput. This is a baby who is nicely dressed, then that means at least a few hours or days post birth, and you have a nice swelling on one part of the scalp. Usually cephalhematoma happens in parietal region because forceps, that's where it's going to press. So this is a cephalhematoma. This is a baby who is in NICU, who I can see there is swelling that is increasing or spreading like this, right, on either side, and it's going to be a boggy swelling when you touch. If you see one case of subgaleal hemorrhage, you will never forget. and you will be on the vigilance, because mortality rate is as high as 12 to 14%, right? So this is a baby who is having a subgaleal hemorrhage. Questions can be asked in this topic in any means. Okay, so they can ask just caput, they can ask just cephalohematoma, just subgaleal hemorrhage, ask you to draw the diagram, and ask you to write the differences between a caput and a cephalohematoma. So I hope I have covered all the important points in this one slide. So thank you guys for listening to me patiently. If you found this useful, share it to your juniors, share it to practicing people who might benefit from it. Thank you all and all the best.